Since we are now at 6:30, welcome everybody. Appreciate you taking the time to join us here, representing the Denver HBA and session 10 for talking about HVAC and water heating systems for the rebuilding efforts. And my name is Sean Lamons. I work for Mitsubishi Electric Train, so we do heat pumps, and we also have Robbie Schwartz from Build Tank, and he's the kind of a de facto advisor for the rebuilding efforts in the cities and the county. So thanks for joining, Robbie. We also have Rusty Buick, which is one of my favorite names in the world, by the way. Rusty's with Thrive Home Builders and
with Energy Logic.
Energy Logic, right? Sorry, I was looking at something else I had written down there. Sorry, apologize there, Robbie. But he does work with Thrive Home Builders and many other builders in the Front Range on new construction projects. So appreciate the efforts there, gentlemen. And thanks, Steve, for setting us up in the session here. So we'll go ahead and get started. Agenda-wise, we're gonna move through some initial information about what we've got to talk about tonight, and we've got a little video in there as well. Rusty's gonna chime in from a resident of Rock Creek, and also from a perspective of builders that he talks to. Robbie's going to talk about incentives and program information, and I'll have some information on heat pumps in particular. And then really we want to leave the bulk of the session available for everybody to ask questions. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody for now, unless anybody has any burning question that they just want to get out, or any issues, sound or anything. Leave that for a moment. Seems like everybody's okay. And you can turn your cameras on. We'd love to see you. If you don't want to, that's understandable. But primarily we want to spend the bulk of the session, meeting here on answering your questions. So as we talk, or maybe you've brought questions to the meeting, we want to get to those. So we'll mute for a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Rusty just to talk about his perspective. And let me, Rusty, can you unmute yourself? Is that all right? Do you have access to that? Perfect.
Yes, I think we are good. All right. Yeah, thank you, Sean. Again, my name is Rusty Buick. I'm with Energy Logic. What Energy Logic does is we work with a lot of the builders and homeowners across the state doing building code verification and testing, and then above code programs and utility rebate programs certification to allow people to get through the energy code aspect of building a new home. As Sean said, I am a resident of Rock Creek, so that day was an impactful day for me. I was very fortunate in my house that did not burn down, but the house that I had lived in previously did burn down in Rock Creek. So we've got a lot of friends and neighbors that were impacted for it. So I'm really excited to try to, bring my skill set and Energy Logic and support the rebuilding and try to make this as smooth and as easy of a process as possible. A lot of what we are doing is, I do think there's two components to the rebuilding process that I'm sure all of you guys are involved in. One is the code process, where you've got to bring your house up to the latest code. And, Superior and Louisville have been working with the builders. There's, because the code continues, it's an evolving process. Most of the homes that burned down were built under a much, much, much older code and to a different standard. And then, as this process occurred with the fire, many of the jurisdictions were in the process of transitioning into an even more difficult code, going from the 2018 to the 2021, especially from an energy point of view. And I know they've created different paths. They've given people options because of this situation, so that you can build under the 2018 code or go to the 2021 code. And those requirements vary, and again, we're mostly focusing on just the energy side of things, insulation, windows, HVAC equipment, and stuff like that. And then I would also imagine there's a lot of questions regarding, Excel really stepped up as far as offering a lot of very significant rebates if you build your house to a different standard and move it, into even a more energy efficient component. And with some of the situation with, insurance and things like that, it's like, okay, can we get there? How do we do these things? Why are we doing those things? And so I think, the main goal of today, one of those components is some of the benefits of electrification, moving to heat pumps, moving to heat pump water heaters, trying to understand what those are and why should you be putting those into your house? Why is Excel and the code pushing us towards those, motivating us to try to do those? And what's the difference? What are the advantages and drawbacks? And those are some of the things I think we're here to try to answer your questions on those, give you some guidance on is this a good plan to move to those newer technologies, and why should I do that? So that's kind of my perspective, and then kind of let Robbie kind of dive in a little bit deeper.
Great, thanks, Rusty. My name is Robbie Schwarz. My company is Build Tank Inc., which I call a practical building think tank, and I am currently the Boulder County New Homes Building Advisor. And what I wanted to do today was to show you and give you a little tour of the Rebuilding Better website. So Sean, you need to give me access to share my screen so that we ultimately want to make sure that everybody knows all the resources that are available to you, from the rebate incentive programs to other grants and other equipment incentives or equipment rebates that are available to you. Okay, oh, here we go.
CFAC popped up. Okay, great.
Yes, yeah. So my screen right now, you should be seeing the Rebuilding Better website. This is a great centralized resource for almost any information that you need with regards to the Marshall Fire rebuilding here. A lot of it is just scrolling down and down and down, but you can also get to different sections of the website by going to this corner in the lower left-hand corner and this arrow at the toolkit. The website is broken down into, in essence, 6 chapters of that website, and you can get into it in that way, or you can go on this page and just scroll down, and you'll get to a homeowner section and a builder section here. One thing I wanted to point out is part of my role as the New Homes Building Advisor is that I'm available to you as the homeowner, your builder, your energy rater, your architect, anybody who has questions with regards to rebuilding from either an incentive perspective or an equipment or building science or building assembly perspective. I am available to answer questions or try to get you on the right path to get your questions answered here. And I am doing weekly office hours, and you can register to go to the weekly office hours every Wednesday, but you can also reach out directly to me and give me a call. I'll put my direct phone number in the chat before we're done tonight so that you can reach out to me directly if you have questions here. I think I can reduce that. So when we go down on the homeowner side, we can get to those different chapters that we were talking about. We can get to some other information, and if you have questions and whatnot, you can start getting answers there. I'm going to switch over to the builder side because it's really one of the easier ways to get at the incentive programs. This incentive program mapping tool helps give your builders and you an idea of the different programs that are available and what's required of that. It's a spreadsheet that we developed that kind of talks about each of the incentives and gives a quick description of what's required and how those requirements overlap between the different programs. These are the actual rebates that are available starting at the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and going through Passive House. They, to some extent, they build on each other, but the dollar amounts aren't additive. So if you choose the Energy Star version 3.2, you would get $10,000. If you successfully completed your house to that incentive level, you would not get $7,500 plus the $10,000. It's a specific dollar amount there. But as you build on, so these programs utilize the Energy Star version 3.2 program in the DOE Zero Energy program and also the Energy Star new certification. I'm going to just concentrate on this program here because Energy Star new certification utilizes the version 3.2 Energy Star program to get the base energy efficiency of the house underway and kind of established there. And the new certification is all about electrification of your house. That electrification is basically has 4 key requirements. The first requirement is using a heat pump to heat and cool your house. It can be any of the variety of heat pumps that are available that Sean's going to discuss here. You have to use a heat pump for hot water heating, and you have to use conduction and convection cooking, so electric cooking in the house. And the last requirement is that you set up the house to be ready for an EV charging station there. You don't have to actually put the station in, but you have to pre-wire for that station. And that would get you the $17,500 incentive. And hence kind of our focus tonight is looking at heat pump heating and cooling and water heating, and hopefully answering some questions about that. The other thing to know about electrification is that the state of Colorado is offering an additional $10,000 on top of any of these incentive levels if you do electrify your house. So you don't necessarily have to go to Energy Star new certification, although it makes a ton of sense to do that if you're thinking about electrification. And you can get an additional $10,000. Now, the only requirement that's different there is that you also have to permit the house under the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code to get that incentive from the state of Colorado there, which Rusty was pointing out earlier in our conversation when we were just planning this session, that it does, if you're going to go for any of these incentive levels down here, it doesn't make sense not to permit under the 2021 IECC, because all of these programs, all of these building methodologies are built on top of the requirements of the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. But remember, it's not necessarily your responsibility as the homeowner to dive into the details of what that means. That's why you have people like Rusty and Energy Logic out there, your energy consultants and energy raters out there, and your builders and architects are the ones that really need to dive into the details. What you need to do is decide, yes, I want an electrified house, or I want an energy performance that's similar to the Energy Star version 3.2 program. And you can get better understandings of what that means if you download this incentive and programs mapping tool there. As you go down, there's a video that talks about the incentive programs, so you can get a little bit more information there. If you decide on an incentive program, you need to fill out this, or your energy rater or builder needs to fill out this rebate registration form. So in essence, you hold your spot for that incentive rebate with Excel Energy, and you'll turn this in at roughly at the same time as permitting. And then you'll need to turn in documentation before you get your certificate of occupancy to actually claim that incentive program. If you haven't chosen a builder yet, there's some resources for choosing builder, including questions that you should ask, which are on the homeowner side. And then, so that's kind of the highlights of the web page. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview and kind of focus our attention on the HVAC side, specific to electrification. But also, if you have questions about standard HVAC systems, heating with a forced air furnace or heating water with gas, for example, a gas tank or tankless water heater, we're available to talk about that as well there. So don't hesitate to answer or pose questions on that realm as well. Sean, it's to you now.
All right. Appreciate that, Robbie. Good overview. And Rusty from Energy Logic, thank you. Yeah, so I've got a few slides. We can run through that. I've got a little video. We can run through that. I think first I want to ask a question, and I'm going to unmute folks as well. Let's see if I can figure that out. Let's see, unmute all. How do I unmute all? I know I saw it. I can't find it now. Well, anyway, if anybody has questions, please unmute yourself. And
Sean, if you scroll down to the bottom, you should be able to on the bottom left.
Bottom left. Let's see, under participants. Oh, I just turned on the participants. I'm still not seeing it. Unmute all. Well, I don't know that that's critical. If people can unmute themselves, if they have questions on some of the information that Rusty shared and Robbie shared. Also, I have a question for the room. If anybody wants to share, how many builders or how many homeowners are in attendance here? If anybody wants to share that. Got a chat box here. Questions in the chat. That's from Ellen. Yep. Ellen, thanks for asking the question. I did see that I think it was Leah you had your mic unmuted for a little bit there. I didn't know if that meant you had a question. But go ahead and put your questions in the chat and we'll get back to those and I'll continue on. All right. So close that.
While you're doing that, it also would be great to know if you are a homeowner or a builder on the call, and you could put that in the chat as well.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you. Gentlemen, we had talked about that little video. I think I'm going to hold off on the video. We can show it later. I want to move through and get to the Q&A session as much as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. Share. All right. So I'm going to make sure that goes in the presentation mode. Can you see that okay? Great. All right, perfect. So I wanted to share this. I pulled this actually from another slide deck from colleagues over at Tri-State Energy, and it was just a nice little summary of heating and cooling loads, what we're talking about with HVAC, and it also applies somewhat to same but different to water heating. It's how much work has to be done, right? So with the heating and cooling load, we're looking at the envelope of the house, we're looking at where it's located, where the sun comes in, we're looking at whether or not you have ducts in the house, air leakage, internal gains, and a lot of I would say a part of the confusion of a lot of these things is how do I measure all these things, or how do I think about all these things? And a lot of the programs that are in place have to do with that building shell and whether or not there's duct work and the air tightness of the house. You have less control. Obviously, you're building where you're building, and the orientation is going to be depending on the lot and the internal gains, or simply how you live and the stuff you have in there. But the programs we're talking about are those middle three, that building shell, the duct work or ductless, and then air leakage are major components in that calculation. So a quick dive into heat pumps as a technology, and this applies to air source as well as ground source. And it applies to space heating and cooling, as well as the heat pump water heater technology as well. I apologize that we don't have a whole bunch of slides differentiating all those, but I just want to talk about the concept of how a heat pump works. On the there's that circle in the middle there, top middle, that compressor. We're really talking about pressurizing the refrigerant. And as we pressurize the refrigerant, it already has some heat in it. And we're shifting that refrigerant kind of in phase, if you will. We're adding extra heat. It has some heat. We're adding some more heat. We're pressurizing it and energizing it, putting it into the indoor space, and then we're getting the heat out of that refrigerant. It's a phase change. It's moving from vapor to liquid, if you will. We're giving up that extra heat into the house, and then it returns back out into the system. And that, whether or not that system is an outdoor air source heat pump or ground source heat pump, it just depends on where that source of energy is coming from. But that is a fundamental, cycle of the refrigerant cycle. It's just a refrigerant that is if we were walking around and it was at normal, everyday temperatures, it would be a vapor. But when we're managing that refrigerant, it is changing from a liquid to a vapor and back. And it is that change from liquid to a vapor that really reveals and utilizes that hidden heat. So this little graph on the left side shows we can do that with water as well. So we're familiar with that as ice changing from solid to liquid, and then from liquid to vapor in the form of steam. And there's that hidden heat, if you will, across that straight line there. The water isn't increasing in temperature. The right side of that graph shows the temperature rising. But that straight line where that tea kettle is sitting on, kind of like a stove top, it's heating up and absorbing that energy into steam. And then it finally starts to rise up beyond 212, right? So it's that hidden heat we're talking about with refrigerants. We can talk about the graph on the right too, but it's probably more than we need to. We can come back to that if we need to. Here's an example of, this is at my house, right? I'm in Westminster, Broomfield area, and this was in March of 2021. And obviously it's cold and obviously it's snowing. We got 18 inches of snow in March in 2021. And I just took a picture of my heat pump doing its thing, providing heat to the house. Yeah, there's a bunch of snow around, but it goes through the defrost cycle and it clears up that ice, and then it continues to deliver heat into the house after that. And it just does its thing. It moves through that refrigerant cycle and its defrost cycles to provide heat comfort on a long, kind of slow, warm process, if you will, into the house. And if it needs the extreme temperature heat, it can provide it, assuming that you're talking about a cold climate heat pump. This happens to be one of those cold climate heat pumps, and there's many brands that provide cold climate heat pumps. And this is probably a big difference between an air source and a ground source heat pump. Ground source obviously would not have, well, not obviously, this air source uses the energy in the air, even though it's cold, there's still energy in there to absorb heat out. Ground source would have it would have loops going into the ground, really, 250, 300-foot wells underneath your property going down, and doing the heat exchange down in those wells, and then bringing that heat back up, compressed, delivering heat to the house. So air source versus ground source, those are the two kind of primary differences there when we're talking about heat pumps. Robbie, do you want to add anything? Did I miss anything on that?
Sorry, no, I think that was perfect.
Okay, great.
I'm just gonna let people know I'm adding some stuff into the chat and
Great.
answering some of the questions as Sean's going here.
Thanks for monitoring that, Robbie. Okay, so just to jump straight to the concerns that people have about heat pumps at altitude and at cold conditions, extreme conditions. This is a system that's installed at the top of Snowmass ski area, and it is providing the heat for a 2,000 square foot ski patrol hut up there. So it's life safety, it's extreme conditions, and they turned off shut the breakers off on the electric resistance heat that was up there. And this is really a demonstration project. Aspen Ski Company came to us and said, let's give this a shot. Let's see how it does up here. And I think it did an exceptional job. I was not only from a branded standpoint, I'm just really excited to see heat pumps reaching this level of performance. And that helps me as a homeowner and as someone that talks about heat pumps just in my personal and professional life, to know that with good design, good implementation, good equipment, they can take care of these extreme conditions. And that is really hitting the market, right? So heat pumps have outsold furnaces. They outsold furnaces in 2020. Furnaces recovered slightly in 21, and heat pumps are on track to continue to outsell furnaces. And these are national numbers. These aren't necessarily Colorado numbers, but they're national numbers. So heat pumps are gaining traction in the market, and they can do the job when properly designed and specified and installed. So that said, you can go check out this data if you want to. Looking at various organizations, SWEEP, Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, it's based in Colorado, but they cover the Southwest, multiple states across the Southwest. And they put out a report earlier this year saying that, hey, if you're building in climate zone 5, we recommend that you build with a cold climate heat pump or ground source. To be fair, I think that should be added in there, without a backup furnace. It doesn't need it with proper design. You can have backup heat if you want to. That can come in different forms, but it doesn't need it. And there's savings involved with not having to install that extra system. So a consideration from a vetted resource partner there. Costs, right? Cost of operation. It's important to consider that what is it? It's not just the US that's using natural gas, right? So the left side, there's a lot in this slide, and I'll try to describe it without having to read through the whole thing. Left side are prices, looking backwards a few years of natural gas. The right side is volume of gas, natural gas, looking forward into the future, right? So we've got prices on the left. Europe and Asia are orange and the kind of maroon reddish. Those folks are paying a lot more for natural gas in their markets, and they have for a little while now. And by the way, this graph is from before the Russia invading Ukraine. So literally just into early March, I would say. These are the numbers looking backwards a few years. So they're paying more for natural gas than we are, which is the bottom row there. The bottom line says US natural gas Henry Hub. On the right side, the pink and the blue are Asia and Europe. The black line very bottom are the Americas. So not only are they paying more, but they're using more as well, and they're going to continue to use more over time. So natural gas isn't going away. But if I was a betting person and I saw that somebody else was using more of it and they were paying more for it, I would suspect that my prices might be going up for a commodity that is traded across the world. And I don't have a crystal ball, but that's just what I'm seeing, and that's what I wanted to share with everybody. But when you boil it down to Colorado and what we're seeing and what we have to deal with, these are numbers from my house. Again, I'm in Westminster, Front Range, and in the bill that I got from March of 2021 had a price per therm of 56 cents. The price that I got, or the bill that I got 1 year later, early March 2022, I was at 93 cents a therm. And you could, if you are interested in kind of double checking this for yourself, you can check in with Robbie with the navigators that are available to you. It's really just a matter of taking the price you're paying all in for your bill minus your connection charge, and then dividing it by your therms, and you can come up with that number. So how does this track with all the different choices in the fuels that we have? Well, coal has been on a downward slope due to climate change and decarbonization, et cetera. Natural gas has been on an upslope as a replacement fuel for coal. And you'll also see that the green, kind of dark green renewables are on a pretty dramatic uptick as well. Nuclear pretty flat. But what I want to point out here is that renewables have now matched the level of coal on the national grid, right? So that's a pretty important inflection point, and renewables are trending up, coal trending down, natural gas taking up the bulk of the need. But what does it do for us as consumers, as homeowners, as builders, et cetera? What does it do to set us up for success in this market? I would suggest to you that the all-electric house is better enabled to move forward into the future with costs that are not going to be rising, and that we're going to be able to leverage that equipment in our house and the performance of our house with the renewables that are a choice going into the future, depending on what the pricing and the equipment that makes the most sense. And I want to leave off with the fire recovery. I have a friend who lives in a house in this photo, and while obviously not all the homes in this photo burned, one across the street did, and across the park did. And his house was was retrofitted actually, and it was retrofitted to a very tight air leakage standard, passive house level tightness. So that's one of the standards you can opt into for the rebuilding efforts. And with that tight house, he did not suffer from smoke damage the way that his neighbors, whose houses also survived. But his house didn't have the same amount of smoke damage, and he was able to get into his house after a few days because he was all electric, rather than waiting for longer for the gas to be turned on. So I want to point out that in this scenario, the all-electric house with a tight envelope and good air sealing insulation, et cetera, and good filtration, to be fair, that's an important piece for indoor air quality. He was able to get into and recover his life, if you will, faster with an all-electric house. So with that, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to hand this back over. Sorry, one sec, figure out how to do this. I'm probably the last person you probably wanted to have.
John, I'm going to jump in while you're doing that real quick and just add that what Sean's talking about in terms of building a airtight building envelope and a super well insulated building envelope can be achieved by any of the incentive programs, including the 2021 IECC. But that's the fundamental base starting point that you need to understand in order to properly make the proper choice of the HVAC equipment that you want to install in that house. You want to ensure that you have good insulation levels, a good airtight house, good ventilation, and then you're choosing that HVAC choice or going electrifying the house as your HVAC choice. There, you're just given a lot more flexibility in your choices by having that sound building thermal envelope.
Yeah, great clarification, Chavi. Thank you. So with that,
would you guys like to start some questions with Adrian? I know, Robbie, you've answered some, but maybe we could just go through those with the group and maybe talk about those a little bit more.
You bet.
Sure. So Adrian asked, well, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question to everybody so everyone could hear Adrian.
Sure. I was just wondering if the house, like by building to the 2021 standards, would increase in value versus building to 2018 codes.
Well, newer is better, but specifically it doesn't necessarily translate into a value proposition. As I said in the chat there, however, there is documentation and research that has been done that shows that building to the Energy Star standards or any of the standards that are being incentivized does increase the value of the house. And all of those building programs are based off of the 2021 IECC that are being incentivized through Excel Energy. So in a roundabout way, yes, but specifically, if you just build to the 2021, it's harder to document that you're adding value to the house, because in essence, that is the code. That is what you're supposed to build to there.
Right. Robbie, or Rusty, do you want to offer in? Because, from a HERS rating perspective, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, kind of reiterate what Robbie said. I mean, the reality is when somebody's out there looking to buy a house, they don't ask what code it was built under. That you're just looking at a lot of other things that dictate value. But I think one of the big things to think about, I think most of the people on this call are homeowners and people that are going to be really rebuilding their house, and the actual cost of operating the house is definitely going to be lower. As far as the efficiency and things like that. So your operational costs, your monthly costs should be lower. So there would be some savings there. But as far as recouping it, I think that's very hard to say right now.
Yeah. It also increases comfort and durability of the structure as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, all that makes sense, but I think I'm maybe similar to a lot of other homeowners on this call. I'm underinsured by like $300,000, and I just cannot afford to pay more to not get more out of it. Do you know what I mean? So there needs to be some type of value that's going to help me pay for the build, because I don't have $300,000 to pay for it. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, yeah, it's great that utilities go down in the future, but it doesn't help me right now.
Yeah. And Adrian, you had that other question in there too about, will the increased cost be covered by the 27K of rebates if you go with the all electrification option? And again, it's like, it depends on how you're going to rebuild certain components of what you're selecting. Even with the heat pump technology, there's different price costs for different heat pumps from different manufacturers and things like that. There's good, better, best type of stuff. Is it possible to meet the qualifications of the electrification program and have it offset the 27,000 or be a net benefit to you? It's going to be really, really close. I don't want to mislead you and say that absolutely you're going to get more money back, or your increased cost, your delta on your cost is going to cover that what you're going to get on the rebate. But I also have heard a lot of information, and again, I live in this community and I'm a former builder and now an energy rater. And I've heard a lot of stuff like, oh, it's going to cost $100,000 more to do electrification. And that is not true either.
Yeah.
I think you need to get in with your builder and start talking, working through different scenario options and selections and see what they can do for you.
Yeah.
I have a question on this spreadsheet. Like, where are those ranges coming from, the 4,000 to 13,000? Because that's a pretty wide range. Like, what type of are there?
I put this up because it's a resource that the Energy Smart team has put together based off of historical research and based off of numbers that have come out from specific builders that have released numbers, and based off of a study that a group, an engineering group called Group 14 did for the city of Louisville. So
Hey,
all
Robbie,
of that is talked about at the beginning, or in each section. It kind of tells you where the numbers came from here. But the bottom line is that depending on what you're doing, and if you're taking advantage of the rebate dollars and whatnot, it's showing that your house can be potentially cheaper to build if you're building to the 2021 and using the electrification incentives, or depending on the size, can be slightly more to build there. But I also wanted to take some time and make sure that this is emphasized here, is that the increase in the efficiency of the house is increased, pretty dramatically. So that's going to impact your comfort, potentially your resale if you take advantage of these new green addendums in the appraisal networks that are out there, and your overall comfort and livability in that house. You really have what we call an opportunity cost to design and implement the things that go behind the drywall before the drywall is put up. And if you don't take advantage of that at this stage, you're potentially not going to have the opportunity to upgrade that house until the house is in essence is torn down and whatnot. So I put a link to this in the chat, and you can spend some time on this spreadsheet, but it's a resource that's available on the Rebuilding Better website there. Cost is just one of the most difficult things to talk about because we're in this supply chain economy now that has just changed the dynamics so dramatically. So before the pandemic, the estimates were that going from code to Energy Star was in the $5,000 to $7,000 range. You know, material costs have just exploded now with the supply chain issues there, and we just can't give you anything that's super certain. So you're getting these large ranges now, and that's really the best that can be done at this point.
Yeah, and I'll add to it, Adrian, that's a good question about the range. There's a lot in that number. So frankly, that range is actually relatively tight for the different choices that you have for different types of equipment, different finishes that come along, the kind of the premium versus the mainstream versus the entry level. I will say that when it comes to equipment, whether it be a water heater or a heat pump or some kind of electric resistance, like a towel warmer in a bathroom or what have you, there's a wide range. You could spend $150 to $1,500 just in a way to warm a small little bathroom somewhere. So that's part of what goes into it. And you tend to get what you pay for. When it comes to equipment, you get what you pay for because there's not much margin in the market for a company that doesn't offer value for the additional price. Until you get into the aesthetics and the differences and the fit and finish and feel of something, then sky's the limit on what your choices are and how it looks and feels. I don't know if that answers your question, Adrian, but hopefully.
No, it does. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It looks like Leah had a question about indoor air quality. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Oh yeah, thanks for taking my question. As I was scanning through the spreadsheet that you had that compared the different requirements for the different, I don't know what to call them, I guess energy saving. So like next gen versus 3.2 versus net zero. Some of them included the EPA's indoor air quality standards and some of them don't. And I got a little confused because they build on one another. And so maybe just take a step back and talk a little bit about indoor air quality and which of the incentives require a focus on that.
Yeah, so the only incentive that specifically addresses indoor air quality is the Zero Energy Ready Home program. Through that program is put out through the Department of Energy. It utilizes the Energy Star version 3.2 program as its starting point, and then it adds roughly 7 other mandatory requirements to increase the efficiency beyond Energy Star, to address indoor air quality by utilizing the EPA's Indoor Air Plus program, and to deal with hot water circulation and pre-wiring for photovoltaic panels there. So indoor air quality is a big issue that is addressed by codes and programs, primarily by introducing whole house controlled mechanical ventilation to the house and filtration to the house. But it's not dealt in kind of a holistic manner unless you also incorporate the Indoor Air Plus program.
Yeah, one thing, Leah, when you're looking at these programs, they're what we call above code certification programs. So each one of them, they're not requirements, they're separate, or they all have their own parameters of what you need to do to put that label onto your house, whether it's Energy Star, whether it's zero energy ready, whether it's FIAS, all of these different things. And that it's not a federal requirement. The Indoor Air Plus program is an above code program that takes your house that has certain parameters will be better than if you were just to build it to code. And the as Robbie was saying, the Zero Energy Ready program is the only one that has the Indoor Air Plus program as a prerequisite for it. So that's why it sits in that one and not in the others.
Okay,
Can
that
I
helps me
ask you-
understand that.
I'd like to ask you a question to follow on to Leah's when that's possible.
Oh, sure. Just to follow up on that. So as we're thinking about, building our house, you said like this is our opportunity to think about adding these things. What parts of that indoor air quality are important that are there some that are already built in? Like I know we're going to go for the next gen certification. That's really what we're aiming for with our builder. And I'm wondering if indoor air quality is important to me, whether I need to steer him towards that EPA requirement, or if that's just a conversation that we have as we're building to
Yes.
figure out what's important.
So think of it this way. I mean, these are just basically they're labels that you would put on your house that have requirements that are associated with those labels. You can build your house to the Indoor Air Plus requirements without doing, standalone or in conjunction with these other programs. So the Indoor Air Plus program is a great program. It's focusing on the indoor air quality of your house. It's setting certain parameters like that you're putting in low VOC materials, that you're looking at your garage to house connection to make sure that carbon monoxide's coming in there. It's doing those specific things to make sure that your indoor air quality is being improved. And you could add that program or not based on what your goals and desires were. The only one where it's tied into the rebate structure is through that DOE Zero Energy Ready program, where it's a prerequisite. But you could decide that you want to do all electrification, Energy Star, the next gen program. Indoor Air Plus is not a prerequisite, but you can always add it.
Yeah, but also think that Indoor Air Plus is another program that builds off of Energy Star. So you're getting a level of water management, and water is one of the largest causes of indoor air quality issues because of its ability to make mold grow and whatnot. So for example, Energy Star's water management checklist takes care of the majority of that for the Indoor Air Plus program. Radon issues are issues that you want to take care of, and there are some requirements in code to address radon issues. Ventilation is a big part, but it's also covered by codes and by the Energy Star program. Now, filtration is a big one that the Energy Star Indoor Air Plus program addresses, that you might want to talk to your HVAC contractor to make sure that they design the system that's compatible with a high MERV or a high MERV filter. And a high MERV filter, when you're talking about 13 or higher, you're talking about being able to filter very, very small particles out of the air, including potentially viruses and bacteria there. So there are some things that you are already getting from an indoor air quality perspective with these other programs. And the Indoor Air Plus program kind of just takes it to that next level and gives kind of a checklist approach to how to achieve that. That includes looking at material selection that you're using to build the house, that the other programs don't look at that part of it.
Yeah, I want to add in too, and Ellen, I know you had a follow-up question, but you mentioned MERV, and that's just a rating for filtration minimum. It's a minimum efficiency reporting values, I believe it is, and the higher the number, the better. It has to do with the smaller and smaller particles being captured, which really for anybody, day to day, it just means, is it smoke? Is it dust? Is it pollen, et cetera, and so on, different kinds of particles that float around in the air we want to filter out. So just a point of clarification.
Great.
Ellen, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, Leah and I both live in unincorporated Boulder County. And as Marshall Fire victims looking to rebuild, we are facing kind of a wild code thing that's based on square footage of prescriptive path, HERS rating, Energy Star, or Zero Energy Ready being requirements based on the square footage of your home. And so what we in the UBC are concerned with are, for example, if you're a less than 3,500 square foot house following what they call prescriptive path, can you run around with that and qualify for the incentive programs, such as the state of Colorado's all electrification
Yes.
program or the Excel Energy program? And then for some people building larger homes, they have to do the DOE Energy Ready as part of their thing. Will we all be eligible for all of the incentive programs, even if we're following different parts of Boulder County's Build Smart?
The base answer is yes. The Build Smart program has been deemed to be equivalent or better than the 2021 IECC. So the state of Colorado is offering their incentives if you do the requirements of the electrification portion. And if you were to just put in for the 2021 IECC Excel incentive at $7,500, you would get that for building to the unincorporated Boulder County Build Smart program, whatever size house you're building to that program or that code.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, because it's just that it seems like the different size houses follow different standards, somewhat at least. And so we're just
it's
trying to
just
make sure that it works for everyone.
Yeah, it's just that the larger house is required to do a little bit more than the smaller house.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying for all of us.
And don't hesitate to follow up with me if you have further questions on that.
Well, a little follow-up to Adrian's question about property value, right? Market value. Market value is set by how much people want to be in the community, right? I mean, if you're just comparing house to house, if you just take the house and lift it up and say, how much would you pay for this house, regardless of where it's at? There's a lot of houses in other places that are far more valuable than, some of the houses found in Boulder County. But because people want to be in Boulder County, that's a value. Now, there's also the livability of the house, not just where it's located, but how nice is it to be there? And I will say this, I mean, if you're considering doing the ventilation strategy like an ERV, just a point of reference, the people that I know that have lived in a house, that do live in a house with an ERV, would not move into a house without an ERV. It's just that clearly better. And so how to put a value on that, I'm not really sure. But when I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that as this community builds back, that it's going to not only have all the benefits that you were used to, the reasons why you were here, but it's going to have a substantial leveraging ability to live better, lower utility bills, enable you for a better setup for renewables, for vehicles, et cetera, electric vehicles. And we're talking, 10 years, 20 years down the road, well within the time frame of the mortgage that you're going to be paying on this. And I know that this can seem, I don't want it to come across as self-righteous or tone deaf or anything like that. I just know in the bottom of my heart that if you can figure out a way to put this massive lift into a long-term mortgage, that it will be valuable to you, not only in the day-to-day and in the mortgage payment, but in how you live and the value that the market will yield for the work that you're doing figuring this out. I've seen it happen again, but I don't have any, specific recommendations on where to look for that.
Yeah. We might want to direct and see if there are any questions on the specific topic that we're supposed to be talking to today, which is with regards to HVAC and water heating systems. Our anticipation was that there would be some questions about heat pump, water heating, heat pump heating and cooling. But again, if you have questions about these other types of systems, like a traditional forced air furnace or boiler or gas tankless or tank water heater, we're more than happy to go that direction as well. I just want to make sure we have an opportunity to ask any of those questions if people want to.
Yeah, we'll take a pause and see. I do see that Leah typed in another question here.
Yeah, do you want to take that, Sean, about ductless and ducted?
Yeah, second question. Yeah, can you talk about ductless versus ducted heat pumps? Yeah, so we'll take the heat pump question aside for a moment and just talk about ducted and ductless. So a ducted equipment can be anything from the furnace and air conditioner that you've grown up with, or it can be a heat pump that has ducts connected to it. And that can be one single central unit, or it can be multiple, maybe one air handler for each floor, right? A smaller air handler for the top floor where maybe your bedrooms and bathrooms and closets are, and then an air handler for the main floor where you've got guest rooms and office and living room. Anything really that has ducts attached to it. Ductless means not only, and most people that I know are not building a new house with a wall unit in it, right? That box that sits on the wall that does great job heating and cooling, but is really just taking care of that room or the adjacent space. Now you've also got ceiling cassettes, right? So I'm being somewhat stealthy here. Right above my head on my background is a ceiling cassette that is a ductless heat pump indoor unit, and it is located in a spot where it would be hard to get ductwork otherwise, and it's taking care of that space. An important distinction here is that there's more capability for zoning with the ductless, because you're going to end up with more of them because they're only taking care of the rooms kind of room by room. Or you look at ducted, and that can take care of more spaces, and you can add in more integration with filtration, with high MERV filters, with humidity management, with fresh air, etc. So it just kind of depends on what makes the most sense to you. Do you want more zoning with more controls, more thermostat settings, and just, it's more equipment heavy? Or do you want a central ducted system, maybe 2 ducted units for a top floor and a main floor, and kind of more simple controls and interactions with it, but you have to invest in the ductwork to distribute the heating and cooling around? I don't know if that answers your question there, Leah, but let us know. You've also got a question in there about shopping for appliances, induction stoves. I'm shopping for an induction stove soon as well, so I'm looking forward to that. But I'm a huge fan. Big difference there is, Robbie, you might have to take this. I'm going to cough for a second. Hold on.
So the big difference with induction versus traditional gas or electric stoves is that the stovetop is running through an electric magnet system. So your cookware needs to be able to have a magnet stick to it. When you touch the stovetop, it's not hot to the touch, but the energy is going directly into the pot through this magnetic technology that creates heat in that pot. It's incredibly fast at boiling water, for example. And you have much more control over the heat. So a lot of professional chefs actually really like conduction cooking because they have such control over the heat. The other thing to realize is that we're kind of, in essence, brainwashed to like gas cooking because a lot of the cooking shows out there are using gas heat or gas cooktops. But the gas cooktop that you see in a kitchen is 100% different than the gas cooktop that we put in our houses there. In terms of the BTUs that are in that flame, they're significantly different there. So you're getting much more of the style of cooking or the control of the heat source in conduction cooking that a chef would have in a restaurant with this new style of electric cooking there. So everyone that we hear really loves it. And the Energy Smart program in Boulder County has an induction cooktop loaner program. If you want to try it out, you can rent, or not even rent, they'll give you a small version of the conduction cooktop with a pot if you need a pot, and you can play with it for a little bit and then turn it back in. So it's a great opportunity there.
Yeah. Now, I know Rusty interacts with builders that are on the fence about induction. You want to counterpoint that one a little bit, Rusty?
No, I think you're just dealing with the historic public perception of gas being better than induction. But I think my experience and everybody I've talked to has said that when somebody goes with induction and gets used to it, they end up liking it a lot better. It's just the unknown.
It's the unknown. Yeah. Got it. Next question here. With the change in tech, does earth heat exchanger make sense? When you say, Robert, when you talk about earth heat exchanger, you might be talking about the ground source heat pumps, or you might be talking about kind of like an earth tube, like preheated ventilation, which is a little bit more, kind of edgy and potential concern. So maybe unmute yourself and clarify for us.
Yeah, I'm talking about ground source heat pumps.
Okay.
Because nowadays you really don't have to have the backup furnace, particularly when you're super insulating your home. So, I mean, why would you spend the extra money for that?
Yeah. So, meaning, why would you put in the extra, like a higher cost backup system just in case?
No, why would you go with the ground source versus the air?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to say that I think ground source is a fantastic way to go, because you really do, if you've got the right ground for it and you have the tax appetite for it, I think that ground source is a great way to go. That said, the vast majority of people are following, your thoughts on it. And it's like, well, if it's X number of dollars less and the cold climate heat pumps can do the job, I'm just going to do that. Probably, just again, counterpoint, that piece of equipment on the outside of the house that's an air conditioner in the summer is also running periodically in the winter. So, where do you put that thing? Do you just want to get rid of that? If you've grown up in a house where maybe you had a boiler and no air conditioning, and just the thought of having, this piece on the outside of the house somewhere bothers you, that might be, a reason not to do that. And by the way, we didn't talk about, and we should talk about air to water. Apologies for anybody that is looking for more information on that. Robbie, we're all familiar with some folks in the area that do air to water heat pumps, and they can be an excellent option as well. And again, it kind of gets back to configuration choices, right? How do you want to set this up? What are the loads? Where do you want to locate the equipment, etc. And if my wife is from Northern Europe, I love in-floor, I love a warm floor or really nice, wall convectors, air to water. So it's just choices to be made.
Yeah, the other issues with ground source heat pump is that you have the additional cost of drilling the well, where you're actually getting the energy from the earth. And then you still have to distribute that energy. It can be through a water system like Sean's talking about, or it can be through a forced air system, but you have that additional cost. So generally speaking, ground source heat pumps can be more efficient potentially than air source heat pumps, but they're also more costly than air source heat pumps. And I just wanted to point you back to the Rebuilding Better website, because there are incentives or rebates out there for ground source heat pumps and also for air source heat pumps as well on the incentives and rebate page there. So you can get additional incentives or additional rebates for equipment that go beyond the rebates that are put out there for doing one of these building programs out there.
That's great. What about reliability? As you know, high efficiency gas furnaces tend to have a little bit more maintenance. What about heat pumps, whether it's air source or ground source or water source? How much maintenance might they have, and what is the longevity of these units?
Yeah, great question. At the homeowner level, I would say what you're looking at for a product like the Mitsubishi heat pump, you're looking at maintaining your filters, which frankly, most people don't do, but you should do, with any standard air conditioner furnace combination. Other things that kind of potentially come into play and need awareness in the home for potential maintenance is like a condensate pump, right? So if you have a furnace in the basement and you have a high efficiency furnace will generate acidic condensate, and you have to keep an eye on, how is my condensate pump working? Where's that condensate going? What kind of drain is it going to? Is it being lifted up to the proper location? Can't drain it to outside, just into your your planter or what have you. There is condensate considerations for heat pumps as well, but in the winter that condensate is outside, right? So in the outside, the outdoor coil of the heat pump gets colder than the outdoor air. That's really how it absorbs the heat out of the air. It's just got to drive colder than the outdoor air, and then it absorbs that heat. When that happens, you're going to see frost and snow and ice buildup on that unit. And then it's going to go into a defrost cycle, and that water is going to turn to liquid, and it's going to drain down. There's ways to manage that very easily, but it can also be a challenge depending on where it's located on the outside of the house. What you definitely don't want to do is you don't want to put it on a concrete back patio that's on the north side of the house. That you're going to turn that back patio into an ice skating rink, basically. So you're going to have to consider how to manage that winter condensate. Summertime, it's going to be the indoor unit that's condensing, basically the same thing as a regular air conditioner, and it just drains to a wet wall or to daylight. I don't know if that sort of answers your question, but it's filters primarily. Have the system checked, I would say, on an annual basis, maybe you have a maintenance plan, but considering really the condensate for the heat pumps, it's something to think about.
Okay. What about longevity? Even if you maintain it, how is that going to work out?
Yeah, longevity. that sort of tips into the area of you get what you pay for. And again, manufacturers these days, there's so much scrutiny and consumer awareness around when things don't go well. So when you're shopping for a level of product that you want, whether it be good, better, best kind of thinking, as long as the design and the installation are per kind of manufacturer spec or within those bounds, you're going to get different performance out of the different quality of product. And a little bit of a plug here, not because it's just a Mitsubishi thing, but you're going to want to look at companies that have the better track record, the better warranty rates, the better where are they being manufactured necessarily. Mitsubishi, for example, we manufacture across the world, but every single serial number gets tested in the factory. So we know for a fact that it's passed a dozen or so tests in the factory before it leaves. And so our warranty rates are extraordinarily low, best in the business. Now, again, that's a Mitsubishi thing, but there are lots of other companies out there. Talk to your installer a little bit more about that and how to qualify. Here's an important point: how to qualify. Make sure you're qualifying for the full warranty, not just the basic warranty, depending on who's installing it and whether it's registered. And registering your equipment is actually an important piece, because now you can get qualified for the longer warranty. And this goes probably across equipment, all different kinds of equipment. But when you register it, chances are you're going to have, your builder or your installer might not be registering it for you. So make sure you're doing that yourself to get the best outcome.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the next question looks like it's another incentive question or rebate question, specifically with regards to Mitsubishi equipment. On the Rebuilding Better website, it says that the equipment purchase is up to a 20% or more eligible heat pump products. And it actually gives your name, Sean, to talk to with regards to that. So can you speak to that a little bit? How do you actually apply for that incentive or that rebate?
Yeah, if you read through that, it will say to reach out ahead of time. And so really what's involved with that is that when you reach out to me, I have to make the request and set up the purchasing process for the distributor or through the distributor for your contractor. If it's already been ordered, that might be challenging. But Janet, go ahead and go on the website there. You should be able to see my contact information. And I can put it in. I'll just put it in here too while we handle another question, so you can reach out to me. We'll see where things are at with it all. But if we're ahead of it enough, we can help you out with that. But it's possible it's a little past the time to put together that price for you.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, it's not a rebate. It's not an after the fact thing. It is us taking a reduction in our price to the distributor, because I went to bat with my superiors and said, we need to go to bat for these folks, but we couldn't put it into a form of a rebate.
So the next question is with regards to heat pump water heaters. Rusty, you want to give it a stab there? Different
Absolutely.
things to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as manufacturers and things like that, it's very much dependent. There, like everything, there's the different qualities. The biggest thing when you're looking at a heat pump water heater is where you're going to put it. That's the thing I think to pay the most attention to. If you're going to put it into a small closet, or put it into a place that is right near your living area, that's going to end up being a problem, because they do take the ambient heat that's in the room that they're around, especially if they're not ducted to the outside, and they're going to use that heat to heat the water. So it's going to lower the air temperature around those. So most of those need to be in a room that is at least 700 cubic feet large, which would be, basically a 10 by 10 room minimum. The other thing that I found, I just learned this this weekend that was very interesting, is when they're installed, they have to be installed properly. They have to be almost perfectly level in order to function properly. So I think the setup and the installation is more important. The features are, you want to get hot water out of it. And the efficiency and things like that are going to be based off of the label and the manufacturers and the price that you're paying for it. But location is the biggest thing to think about.
Yeah. A question that I've gotten often that I'll just throw out here, since we're talking about heat pump water heaters, is with regards to the recovery efficiency. And the reality is that the recovery efficiency is lower. That means if you drained the tank to basically zero hot water, how long does it take to get new hot water to heat or to deliver to someone taking a shower or something? Now, that first thing to realize is that's a very rare circumstance when you have maybe 2 or 3 showers running at the same time as you have the laundry running or something like that. You might get that. So maybe at Thanksgiving or the holidays or something, that might happen. But if it does happen, it does take a little bit more time with heat pumps to recover or to reheat a full tank of water. But a lot of the heat pumps also come with supplemental backup heat sources. So they have electric heat strip, in essence, or element inside of the tank to help increase that time or decrease the time that is needed to reheat that system. So you want to, if you're worried about that, you would want to choose one that has one of those additional elements that would only kick on in very rare circumstances there. So I just wanted to throw that up. Any other questions?
This is Laz, who's on Leah's companion. I had a question about the total efficiency for heat pump water heaters, in that if you have one that's in a conditioned space, in the winter, for instance, that water heater is pulling the heat out of the conditioned space. And so then I assume whatever your primary heating then has to replace that heat in the conditioned space. So has there been any analysis of what the sort of the combined efficiency, including the efficiency of the heat pump water heater itself, and then whatever heat is moving that heat into the area where the heat pump water heater is? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that one, guys, if you're all right.
Great.
So thinking, backing up to the outdoor air, right? Answering the, how do we condition the space to then put that heat into the water heater? But the outdoor air, we're absorbing about 2 times the amount of heat from the air and putting it as we're putting into the system, right? So if we're putting in 1 unit of energy for the space conditioning and we're getting 3 units of energy out of it, right? You're picking up 2 bits of energy, 2 units of energy from the outdoor air. So it's a 3-to-1 ratio. That's COP, and this is a rough analogy right here, but it's not far off. So now we've got a 3-to-1 ratio to put the heat into the house. Now you've got a 3-to-1 or even a 4-to-1 ratio for heat pump water heaters, because they're not pulling from 0-degree air or 30-degree air. They're pulling from, call it 70-degree air, right? So they're really very efficient. They're smaller, they're quieter, except that kind of thing. But they do make some sound, and there is a compressor involved. But really, if you think about that leveraging up and kind of a series of pulleys, if you will, to get that done, it's substantially more efficient to do the work. And now the combined, if you want to think about it from a weighted average, let's say you have a 40,000 BTU load on the house and a heat pump. I just want to say a heat pump water heater is somewhere in the neighborhood of a 4,000 BTU extra load on the house. These are rough numbers, but if you just kind of do the math, that a heat pump water heater gives you, 10 to 15,000 BTUs of heat per hour, that it's recharging that tank. Like Robbie talked about, it takes a little bit of time to recover. If you break that down from BTUs to watts and back to BTUs, so to speak, it's about a 4,000 BTU load on the space that it's in. And so you might have 10% of your load of the house in heat pump water heater. That was a lot of numbers, a lot of back and forth on that, but go ahead.
I would just add to that when you're designing your HVAC system, you'll have what's called a manual J performed on the house. And the manual J is a heat load calculation to determine how many BTUs you need to heat the house and how many BTUs do you need to cool the house. Part of that calculation is entering how many major appliances are going to be installed in that house. And you want to make sure that they add an additional appliance, because often water heaters generally water heaters are not part of that equation, because they're not taking, a normal water heater is not taking energy from the house there, or contributing to heat the house and maybe contributing to a bigger size air conditioner that you might need to cool the house. So you want to make sure that your HVAC contractor who's doing that calculation and helping to design the HVAC system knows that you're going to be installing a heat pump water heater, so that they can take it into account in this design process there, and you won't have any issues with having the right amount of energy to also heat the water in the house.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was a great explanation of a complicated topic.
And
I'm also glad to hear other people struggle through BTUs to watts. So.
Right. Yeah, I got myself confused just trying to explain it.
So Sean, there was a question about explaining what fully warranty means, or warranted means. Can you?
Yeah. So just speaking, because I know our stuff, I don't know everybody else's, all the other manufacturers. Our base warranty is 5 years and 7 years. So 5 years on part, 7 years compressor. That's the basic warranty, not registered. No, who knows who installed it out of the box. If you register that equipment, then that goes up to 10 years for both parts and compressor. And then if you have it installed by a diamond contractor, which is a qualified, particular qualified contractor in our network, that goes up to 12 years for both. There's also an option to purchase a low-cost labor warranty that's available from the contractor. For, I don't know, it's $100, $150 or $250 or something like that. But that gives you the labor on that as well, to a certain time limit. I can't remember what that is. I know contractors that are like just including that in the price because it's such a low cost insurance policy for the homeowner. But these are conversations to be had with your contractor. Be clear, and your builder, be clear on who has to register, what it is. And boy, I tell you, with all the warranties, that paperwork that's going to be coming at you with the new build, it's just going to be a diligent, deliberate effort to go through everything, and know that there's a little bit of time. For us, I think it's 90 days or something like that for registration. But to be perfectly honest with you, and I'll whisper this, we're not actually checking the date of your certificate of occupancy. So hope that answers that.
Maybe if there's one more question, we'll try.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. Oh, what was that, Robbie? Any
I
others?
was thinking maybe we have time for one more question and then wrap things up.
Yep. Yep. I will say y'all been a great audience. So a question for the room, have you been to some of the other sessions and learned from some of the other sessions, kind of the related topics? Oh, I see one there, supply chain issues. Yeah, supply chain is still a thing for sure. And it's not going away. In my perspective, from what I've read, worldwide computer chip, integrated circuits, these kinds of, high-tech devices are going to continue to be strained. And that goes across products categories for sure. They're talking about obviously vehicles, electric vehicles, even just regular combustion vehicles, not having all the chips that they need. So that scenario is continuing. And I think we're just going to do the best we can to get through this challenging time frame. Other issues with supply chain. One really funky thing that most people don't realize is actually the Ukraine war is having a pretty significant impact on availability of certain raw materials and supply resources that way. So whether it be, out of Russia, but it's constrained because of what's going on, or actually in Ukraine, processing of highly refined neon, for example, is required for computer chip manufacturing to some extent. And so, and Ukraine has had 50% of the world's productivity or production capability of highly refined neon. I think similar with palladium and some of these other things. So yeah, supply chain is a thing and will continue to be a thing. For water heaters, I don't know about water heaters specifically, but I bought a water heater a year ago and it was damaged out of the box, and we didn't know that until it was installed, and that was a bummer. Had to go through the whole warranty process, and who knows why it was damaged, but I know they were constrained on the availability of stuff, so we were kind of stuck for a little bit.
Yeah, Robert mentions that at a certain stage, builders turn over all the warranties and paperwork for all the appliances and moving parts of the house. Often they'll also give you a homeowner's manual, in essence, for the house as well. And usually that happens right at the end when you're doing kind of your final walkthroughs through the house. And then often builders will do a walkthrough maybe 30 days, 60 days, 90 days after you've moved into the house, so that they can get an idea of how things are going and if there are any issues that have popped up now that you've actually been in the house. So yes, all that information should get transferred to you.
Yep. Good question.
I think it's been a great session, and it seems like the questions are winding down. You have my contact information, and Sean put in his email address as well. Rusty, if you go to energylogic.com, you can find out more information about Energy Logic and get Rusty's contact information as well there.
Yep. Great stuff. Thanks all for joining, and glad we could be of service, and we'll continue to be of service. We'll be on additional, another session coming up, I believe, Robbie. I can't remember if you're on that one or not, but, and Robbie is just a massive help for the rebuilding community. So thanks for your knowledge and support, Robbie.
Great. And thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rusty, if
guys.
you're still on too.
Yeah, thank you guys for everything tonight. Really appreciate it. And we'll have our next one tomorrow, beginning at 6:30.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Take care, all.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night, everyone.